What's up? Zero production video again. It's literally a phone, poor lighting, and the hope that nobody interrupts me. It's about time that the political right started fighting back. That's why I've watched the video of Crowder on Tim Pool's show from like 3 or 4 days ago a couple of times. Um, it's about time. It's about time. The political right was persecuted, all of us, for the January 6th insurrection, which was not an insurrection, by the way. Donald Trump said, make your voices heard peacefully and patriotically. Really, not anything there insurrection-y. And then the moment that he got word that things were getting a little out of hand, he told everybody to go home, that that's not the way things are done. We fight it in the courts. Convenient how almost all of that was edited out for the main coverage, and people still believe that it was an insurrection because they're retarded. Okay. But it's about time that the right started fighting back. We were persecuted for that, right? We were persecuted the entire time Biden was president. We were persecuted when Obama was president. Remember the IRS scandal with Obama, where the IRS was spying on conservatives? They were conducting extrajudicial actions against like Tea Party groups under Obama. Remember how that just kind of got swept under the rug? So we had Obama, and then we had Biden the entire time. Half the country called Nazis, while Biden is standing in front of a blood red wall with two Marines in the background, and half the country's Nazis. Trump won. You had crazy numbers of attacks against people wearing MAGA gear. Then you've got the two attempts on Trump's life. You've got the attempt on the successful, unfortunately, assassination of Charlie Kirk. And that's sort of the macro level. And then you look at the micro level, where again, you've got all of these attacks against Trump supporters in Trump 1, attacks against us during Biden, and then you've got attacks that happened to, or attempts that happened to Matt Walsh, Michael Knowles, Ben Shapiro, Steven Crowder, Tim Pool. You've got all these conservative commentators and pundits that were having attempts made, or attacks, successful attacks, happening for a long time. And the right just didn't do anything. And now, finally, the right's decided to fight back, and it's about time. It's about time. The problem with the right for a long time is it was pacifist. And that just can't stand. It's not possible. You can't have that in the modern era, because your political opponents are just going to destroy you. You know, in a world where both political parties were consumed by the burning need to consistently tell the truth all of the time and be as transparent as possible, and stand on principle, stand on the quality of the argument that they can make, rather than attempting to subvert an argument before it even begins on the basis of some immutable characteristic or some other trait that they choose. Because they can't contend with the argument itself, so they have to attempt to cut the knees out from underneath of it somehow. If we lived in a world where instead truth was prioritized above everything else, and perhaps the process by which we arrive at that truth was the difference, was what made up politics, pacifism might work. Because both sides then, in that particular scenario of the political spectrum, or however many political parties you might have, but let's just keep the United States sort of the context of this, the framework of this hypothetical scenario. If both the right and the left were subsumed by the need to consistently tell the truth above all, and perhaps the process by which we arrived at that truth, the same truth, was different, then you could then, in theory, be pacifist in that situation because you're both trying to get to the same place. But that's not modern politics, and it hasn't been modern politics for a long time. The Democrat Party has gone so far off of the deep end on literally everything, that now they can't even tell you what a woman is. And the thing about that is it's kind of a funny haha meme thing where you get people on the right who will just like they'll circulate clips of everybody from random people at Charlie Kirk events or some other pundit where they get asked that question and they just sort of hem and haw or they give some roundabout goofy answer, all the way up to the Supreme Court Justice, whatever her name is, Jackson, Ketanji Brown Jackson, where she was asked in a Senate hearing and couldn't define what a woman was. Uh, One side of the political spectrum has become so divorced from reality that violence is almost an unavoidable and necessary evolution of that trajectory. When you get to a point politically where you are unable or unwilling to adhere to biological observable truth, why wouldn't violence be the next step? I mean, this is the thing about the Democrat Party that's so. It's such an obvious degradation, too. I mean, credit to the Democrat Party at the very least for this. And this is sort of tongue in cheek, but I mean it in that the downfall of the Democrat Party has been mappable by anybody who's been paying attention. I mean, it's not as if this complete degradation of one half of the political spectrum in the United States of America simply just fell out of the sky one day and nobody had any idea that it was going to happen. And even less of a likelihood that people couldn't with almost perfect clarity pinpoint precisely how that degradation was going to go and what the consequences of that was going to be as this decay progressed. Inevitably, it was going to end up becoming violent. Again, you've got one half of the political spectrum that has no idea what a penis or a vagina is. Couldn't tell you. Right? That's what they claim. Couldn't tell you. Or alternatively, they will tell you that physiological anatomy, which is a redundant statement there, but I did that very specifically, is irrelevant. It doesn't matter. It's the same party that says that it's okay to fund the murder of infants. Now, whatever your position on abortion might be, and there's a conversation to be had there, it is an undeniable fact that the Democrat Party is the party of killing infants. Undeniable fact. Okay. Ralph Northam lost. Democrat control of the state of Virginia. I do not recall if he was running again. I believe he was running again to Glenn Youngkin because Ralph Northam blew the lid on the Democrat plan for abortion. And this is the thing about the left that they can't seem to help themselves with doing. They can't seem to help themselves, but every now and again when the environment gets to be a little bit too comfortable, they slip. And this is the thing about evil in general that you're noticing. Yes, I'm saying the Democrat Party is evil. I don't care if it hurts your fifis. But this is the thing about evil. This is the thing about the devil. When you acclimate to evil, when you acclimate to a sinful lifestyle, when you become accustomed to being surrounded by abominations, evil, cruelty, malevolence, sometimes it causes the devil to overplay his hand. You see, God is all knowing, the devil is not. And so God knows that all good things will come in time, right? That there's no reason for God to overplay his hand. There's no reason for God to be extra heavy handed with people, because you will come to God on your own when you're ready, right? But the devil is greedy, and he has to do everything in his power to steer you away from God, to pull you as far away from God as possible. And so most of the time he's very clever in how he does it. He's very careful, he's very calculated in how he does it. It's precise. It's a scalpel, not a hammer. Because the natural inclination of humans is to recoil from true evil. And all human civilizations have always looked up. But when the environment gets comfortable enough, when you get comfortable enough in that environment, sometimes the devil overplays his hand. He shows his cards a little too early. And that can either result in people accepting of this new evil, or they rebel against it immediately, right? It wakes people up who might have been going along the train and didn't realize how far along it had gone until the moment where the devil, convinced that he's won, then shows the final card in his hand. And at that moment, people snap out of it and they see just how far the situation has gone. And this is precisely what happened in Virginia. Ralph Northam went on a radio show and talked about how, in the ideal scenario, you would have a woman go to a hospital and deliver a baby. Deliver a baby. Okay? The baby then would be taken, you can find this online, would be then taken to a different room while the doctor and the mother discussed what to do next. Now, he was talking about abortion. You're going to find people who are going to try to gaslight you into thinking that, no, that's not what he was talking about. He was talking about care. He was talking about care for the baby after. Well, no, there's no conversation to be had between the doctor and the mother at that point, right? Provided that there's no immediate medical issue with the child, with the infant, the care is you make sure the baby is breathing, and then you give the baby to the mother so that the baby can be fed, right? Now, the baby's born prematurely, there's different processes for that, but the thing is all of that stuff is laid out immediately, and the doctors would just go into that mode anyway. That's what they're trained to do, okay? Save a life. If the life is in danger, they go to save the life. That's not what Ralph Northam was talking about. He was talking about, we will take this brand new innocent life after it's been born, and we will put it in a separate room away from its mother. After this incredibly traumatic experience, we will separate them, which again is, and the thing is, like, it's inherently evil. You know that it's evil in that, why would they want to separate the infant from the mother? Because it's easier to other the infant in that case, because she's not looking at the infant, right? She's not looking at her baby. You've created this distance between them. I mean, the whole thing is it is purely evil. I mean, there's no other explanation for it as far as I can see. And honestly, I don't even think there's another one that I would accept at this point. And I'm perfectly willing to admit that I'm jaded or biased or whatever term you might want to use in this particular context. I don't see another explanation for, you take a woman who has just given birth. It's a painful, traumatic experience for her and a painful, traumatic experience for the infant. You then separate her from her baby, and then you ask her, in this moment of overwhelming stress and anxiety and hormones and nerves and medicine coursing through her body, where this thing that was in her, this baby that was in her, this brand new life, now all of a sudden is tangible. Not that it wasn't before, but now it's physical in the sense that she can hold it, right? Now she has to, it's not her providing for it through her body anymore. She has to provide now separately for it. Separate clothes, separate beds, separate everything. It's become an extra level of tangible, in a sense. And I'm probably explaining that really poorly. But you take a woman in that mindset, that stress, that anxiety, that panic, that all the medicine rushing through her too, which inevitably is going to affect the ability to reason. And then you put her on that, or in that position. Do you want to keep this baby that you just had, that we intentionally separated you from, because we don't want you to start to bond with the baby right away by looking at the baby, right? It was calculated, it was meticulous, it was evil, it was malevolent. There's no other explanation. But when Ralph Northam said that, he lost the state to Glenn Youngkin. Lost it right there. The devil tipped his hand. The downfall of the Democrat Party is perfectly predictable. It's perfectly predictable. Why wouldn't the Democrat Party be the party of violence if they can justify murdering an infant? Which, again, is precisely what Northam did. It's precisely what Northam did. But here's the thing. You could wind it further backwards than that. You don't even have to get to the point where you're talking about killing an infant in a hospital. You can go to the point where the Democrat Party is now the party of, you can invariably and irreversibly alter your child's body using hormones and surgeries because that child is under the delusion that they are the opposite sex. Gender is a stupid word. Sex. So it's already the party of tarnishing innocence. You're taking a child who has no concept of sex at all, the physiological function of sex, or the physiological reality of sex, and you are allowing adults to inject that into this innocent being to pervert them. It is a perversion of innocence, or a destruction of innocence party and mindset. That is the modern Democrat Party. So, again, with the understanding that that's how the Democrat Party has devolved, why wouldn't they become the party of celebrating when somebody gets shot in the throat on a college campus? This was a conversation that I had with a family member here who was just awestruck by the fact that you had people openly celebrating the fact that Charlie Kirk got killed. And here's the thing. You don't have to like Charlie Kirk. That's fine. I don't care. You don't have to like the man. But you don't need to be posting videos of you celebrating the fact that this guy got murdered. And by the way, if you do that, it's entirely fair for you to lose your job for that. Your employer probably doesn't want to hire a psychopath. Okay? But like, why is it surprising though? If the Democrat Party, the mainstream, and again, this is the thing that's really important, is this isn't a fringe of the Democrat Party. And again, Steven Crowder has mentioned this. Tim Pool mentioned this in the conversation that he had with Crowder. If you look at the trans stuff that clearly motivated this shooter for Charlie Kirk, there's all kinds of evidence for that. Again, if you want to pretend this guy was a groyper or a MAGA guy or whatever, suck my dick. Suck my dick. You are full of shit. You know you're full of shit. You're lying through your teeth. Get out of here. But if you look at this shooter for Kirk, or Charlie Kirk, who was motivated by trans ideology, the mindset that motivated this guy is not a fringe component of the Democrat Party. It is the mainstream of the Democrat Party. It's the mainstream of Joe Biden. He was president. Kamala Harris, she was VP. Every Democrat candidate in 2024, right, or anybody who talked about it, or the Democrat senators, or even the left-leaning Supreme Court justices, Democrat governors, it's mainstream. Abortion, again, up to and including after birth, is mainstream Democrat. It's not fringe. And so the decay and moral degradation of the Democrat Party inevitably was going to lead to violence. And so at some point, the conservatives were going to have to start picking up torches to defend ourselves. We weren't going to have a choice. Why is it that they're okay with murder? Because it was inevitably the only place this was going to go. It was the only possible option for them. Even take away, here's the thing too, right? Even if you were to take away the the fascist stuff, the Nazi stuff, the whatever. If you were to take all of the name calling away out of the modern Democrat Party and the messaging that they use, and it was just to be, or the messaging rather was just to remain with the radical trans stuff or the radical abortion stuff, right? But they didn't call us Nazis or fascists. We just disagreed on that. But they were as militantly pro abortion, trans, whatever. I would still say that system would inevitably lead to a culture of accepting political assassination on the left. Because death, dying, corruption of innocence, destruction of innocence, has become the mainstream of the party. So it's not even just that the Nazi, fascist, Hitler, evil stuff is the reason why they're okay with conservatives being killed. It's I think you could take that part of it out, leave the radical political perspectives of the left outside of the name calling they do to us, and they still would get to a point where, because the left devalues life at such a fundamental level to include infants in a hospital, according to Ralph Northam, and it's mainstream Democrat. They're not going to say that publicly because they would get lambasted for it. But it's mainstream. I don't recall a single Democrat that came out. Somebody could prove me wrong. I don't recall a single Democrat who came out after Ralph Northam's comments went just nuclear and condemned what he said. I can't think of one who did that. Because it's the mainstream of the party. It's just most of them are smart enough to not say that. I think inevitably it would have ended up going to violence, regardless. And so conservatives at some point were going to have to start defending ourselves. And it's about time. It's about time. You know, I don't want anybody on the left to get attacked. Genuinely, I don't. I don't. I think we're winning we're winning in the battlefield of ideas anyway, because at the very least, even the people on our side of the aisle who might be less debate adept or less learned in logic or reasoning or whatever, methods or means of persuasion that there are out there, at the very least, the people on our side of the aisle can tell the difference between a man and a woman. So, I mean, on that one, we're winning. And I think that translates to us winning in the battlefield of ideas simply because we can see reality. We don't pretend it doesn't exist. I don't want anybody on the left to get attacked. But much like Crowder and much like Poole, although I don't think Poole said this specifically the way that Crowder did, so I'm gonna stick with what Crowder said. I want them to be afraid of losing their life if they come to a conservative event and they start to get violent. I much like Crowder, I make no apologies. I've been saying that for years. Years, I've been saying that. Years. Where anytime I've seen a mainstream conservative person, I'm not going to name names, but good people who I like and respect and watch, who would do the peaceful, we gotta just, and I'm like, fuck that. They would kill you as soon as look at you if they had the chance. If the justice system would allow them to do it, they would round all of us up and they would kill us all at one time. Okay? They would take your children away from you like that. They would round us up and put us in camps if they had the opportunity. I mean, let's be really honest here. Okay? They were trying to create a ministry of truth. Okay? That normally doesn't precede good things. Usually that's a bad sign. They would kill us all if they had the opportunity. It's the way that it is. I mean, in COVID, they were talking about how people who didn't want to get vaccinated, mostly conservatives, should just be left to die if they had to go to the hospital and it was revealed that they weren't vaccinated. They just leave you on the street. Again, another wonderful comment from Jimmy Kimmel, where he made some sort of a comment about that, and he was like, see you later, Wheezy, or whatever, or something along those lines, because Jimmy Kimmel is a piece of shit. They would kill us if they had the chance. So it's about time we pick up arms and we say, no, here's the deal. We're not going to antagonize you. We're not going to oppress you. But we want it to be really clear that this is your side of the street and this is our side of the street. And so long as you stay over there, we'll stay over here. But if you start throwing things or you start crossing onto this side of the street, we are going to lay you out like a Persian rug. And, not give a fuck. Go home and sleep soundly. Because you decided to fuck around and now you found out. It's about time. It needed to happen. So,